Yeah.
You don't mind?
No, we should talk about Biden, though.
Yeah. We'll keep you in the loop, Chris.
Hello and welcome again to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Trainer. My co-host is Leland Faegre, and I think today is day 16 of the federal emergency, which has now been extended to at least April 30th.
It's April Fool's Day.
Yes, it is too. You know, nobody's talking about that. I haven't heard any good April Fool's things going on. Even
people who are normally sort of have a predilection for humor haven't been talking about it for some reason.
So the president has warned us that these 2 weeks will be the worst, hopefully, and that we could have 100 to 200,000 deaths, but you know, maybe
we
not.
might not.
We might not. Yes.
In fact, these are all based on models that can't be trusted.
Exactly. Some people are suggesting the death rate now is like 0.66%, not even 1%.
Less than 1%.
I wonder what would happen if next to the COVID statistics they put the regular flu statistics up there.
I've seen some of those comparisons.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I think 60,000 had died from the regular flu in America.
Which doesn't even suggest a comment from the mass media. It's nothing.
No, I know. And there are a couple of things that I've heard that seem good as far as testing goes. Test. And people are now finally talking about random testing. If we have the ability, we should simply test 1,000 people randomly across the country to see get a better view of what's going on nationwide.
Are they going to use models for that too?
I'm sure they will.
I mean, how are they going to do that?
Well, they could do it. Yeah,
one in Seattle, one in Los Angeles, one in Reno.
Yeah, 50 here, 50 there, whatever.
Okay,
but they can do it more than once. Another thing that I've read an interesting article on is the concept of viral loads. I haven't heard people talking about that much.
I haven't talked about that much.
No. But the fact is, the amount of the virus that you are exposed to is very critical in assessing whether you're going to get a serious bout of the disease.
You mean the quantity of the...
The quantity of the virus that actually enters the body, because, the virus can overwhelm the body. And this is true with other diseases. We've noticed this, but I don't see anybody talking about it with COVID. So those who are exposed to large amounts of the virus from continued contact, for example, in a family, they are most likely to have some people get a serious bout of the disease. Well, if you just catch it casually from going to a ball game or going out in public or being exposed, now they're saying you can get it in the air and all this stuff, but that would likely give you a much, asymptomatic or mild symptoms.
Well, then nobody'd be alive if the quantity was an issue, right?
Well,
if it was that much, just drop over any time.
Right. If there was that much being put in the air, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, I know. So, but that's what I've heard now.
See, I don't think we know anything about this damn thing.
That's the thing.
and nobody does.
To
the extent that they do, they're not being credible.
Right. But if we focused on viral loads, that would mean that we would have to separate families and quarantine the families separately, even infants probably, because if mother sleeps, we see that with measles apparently. If a mother sleeps with the baby and the mother is not immune, then she would get a sick baby. She would likely come down with the disease as an adult, and so the. It's just something to think about, and hopefully people are thinking about it, because sooner or later we have to interact with other people, and if it can be demonstrated that if you're not at risk for a serious bout of COVID-19 through casual contact, then then that could change the strategy, and we could possibly get back to normal a little bit quicker.
Yeah, but if they start to implement these tracking applications, you heard about this?
I know they have it in China because there's a YouTube channel, and there's a Canadian that lives in Shenzhen, which is not Wuhan, but it's close. And he says he was talking about they have tracking apps, so that you can tell when somebody. I don't know how they figure out that somebody is infected and they're still walking around.
Well, I'm not sure how it works, but that's what they're talking about. If they make us keep those, if it's like having a driver's license if you drive, that sort of thing. I mean, where is this going? It's effectively a perpetual
surveillance.
Yeah, it's martial law.
This 1,000-page relief bill is kind of like Obamacare. You had to pass it before you could find out what's in it. And but supposedly the CDC has been given $500 million for surveillance. Now, what exactly does that mean?
That's very comforting, isn't it?
Yes.
What would be more concerning than to know that these people are spending that kind of money to look after us?
I know. I feel so safe and secure.
This is really the issue here: is how much of our civil liberties are going to be affected by this kind of thing because the technology is there to do so.
People are saying we're going to come out of this a lot as a lot different country, and it's very possible. I mean, will we still have a constitution? Even though that old rag has been trampled on over and over again.
Yeah, nobody observes it anyway.
I know.
So it takes a country that actually believes in it for it to have any effect.
But it's up to the American people what they want, and these things happen spontaneously. There are Wildcat strikes going on against Whole Foods. I think Instacart people struck yesterday, if I read the news right. The food delivery people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's where it all comes down, because if we can't.
What if there are rent strikes?
If we're out on the streets and we can't take food deliveries, we have something different altogether. You hear about that oxygen shortage?
No.
I'm seeing it on Drudge right now. We'll go into that in a minute.
Home at Last opens doors to family, to freedom, to finally making it yours. Home at Last, a program.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, my co-host, Leland Faegre. And so this bill passed, and some people have been calling it
Which bill is that?
The safety, what did they call it? They always give these things an official name.
Well, it's the stimulus package.
The stimulus package, that's the only name for it?
Well, no. I understand there is always an official description, but it's effectively a $6.2 trillion stimulus package.
And there's more to come, apparently.
If necessary.
Yes.
Mnuchin told us that this morning.
So the vote was 96-0 in the Senate, but at least they voted. In the House, we had the poor Thomas Massie, the libertarian-leaning Republican from Kentucky, who, he's a crunchy con type of guy. He built his own house. He has his own energy sources and all that.
Yeah, his own business. Yeah. He's quite an accomplished person, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Very impressed by him.
Yes. So he stood up and demanded an actual vote, and he said if the Senate could come. And they're older than we are for the most part, then why can't we come back? And, of course, he was almost drummed out of the party, including by the president, said we should kick him out of the Republican Party and all that. And they said...
Yeah, I was disappointed by that. The thing of it is he's just had it. After 3.5 years of this, and he gets it from his own side. You know, and he's not a wonk on the Constitution. You know, this voice vote kind of a thing. These are things that are beyond his scope of understanding. And Massie said so.
Yeah.
Even Massie defended the president. He says, "I know he doesn't understand these things, but you know, I'm trying to uphold in my duties as a representative the constitutional requirements, and you know, I couldn't do anything else other than do what I did because that's
and he did stand up for it, and,
right.
And like he said, who knows how many people might have voted against it. Both, you know, what the progressives call their, you know, we know that the libertarians or semi-libertarians in the Republican side are called the Freedom Coalition. I just found out that progressive Democrats call themselves the Justice Democrats.
Is that a tranche of the Democrat Party?
Yeah, you know, the what used to be called the Squad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but they're getting it from the real progressives on the left. I mean, there's a lot of phony progressives on the left, but the real progressives on the left that I consider the real progressives, listening to them speak, even though I disagree with their economics most of the time, but they're still, you know, they still are principled people. And, you know, they were saying that Bernie, for example, he could have he's in the Senate, he could have put a stop to the bill. He could have demanded the bill be split into two parts, one for the working class and the other for corporations.
Yeah, but how far would that have gone?
Well,
I mean,
it might not have gone far at all.
But the point was they wanted him to try it.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they made fun of his excuses. You know, that it was going to pass anyway, or the media would have savaged me, you know, and they were saying, well, Bernie, vote for me, or I would stand for you unless the media is going to attack me, you know, and all this stuff.
Well, now that Biden's the foregone nominee, I don't think they would have probably gone after him, but, you know, it's possible. Who knows what that crowd's going to do.
Yes. So we appreciate that some people in Washington still care about, you know, the real issues. And we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I'm not comfortable about having what appears to be, again, it's one of those things we have to we have to wait till the bill is passed before we can see what's in it. But it looks like somehow it's merging the Treasury and the Fed, and given Secretary of the Treasury Munchkin all kinds of exclusive powers to distribute this $6 trillion, you know, to his cronies, and very little. We don't even know how much oversight there is. My understanding was that there was some oversight, but without subpoena power. In other words, all they could do is write reports.
So this was an issue that the Democrats brought up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and even that might have been largely stripped out. So. And then this Blackrock Corporation? That's an interesting thing.
It seems like there's always private involvement in these bills, isn't it? But, you know, there was sort of an understanding of that going in, that because of the desperation or the desperate circumstances that we're in, that was a foregone conclusion. I mean, let's face it, lobbyists are a part of every bill anyway.
Oh, yeah, they're all lining up now.
Yeah, so...
There's going to be a lot of lobbying going on over this.
And Blackrock is, you know, big stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, the $18 billion for Boeing under national security.
And an equity stake for the federal government in the airline industry. Why is that necessary?
I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know the details on that. So that you think that's in the bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently it is. I mean, nobody disputes it. So,
well, Boeing. What happened to Boeing was not a result of the virus. I mean, Boeing.
No, it just took them themselves out of it.
Yes, there's only one engineer left on the board of Boeing. They're all financial people. They've moved the board of directors off the corporate headquarters from Seattle to Chicago. They're all financial people. And, Nikki Haley resigned. She was on the board of directors of
Boeing?
Yes. And so that sparks rumors about Trump might put her in as VP and replace Pence.
No, that's not going to happen. But I do think that she's more impressive than I gave her credit for initially when she first came to my attention, because she's on the East Coast. pays attention to the East Coast. But I think she's more than merited herself, I think, in the course of time. I saw her with Trump as she stepped down from her role at the United Nations. Now, that's just pretty impressive, actually. More impressive than I had originally given
I
her.
can't say that. I mean, she's an absolute neocon, and
She has been, yes.
she almost caused a war because she got confused over Korea.
Yeah, I heard that. I don't know how much legitimacy I give to that story, but...
Yeah, I mean, I am not comfortable with Nikki Haley being anywhere near the reins of power.
And that's what Ron Paul said about her as well.
Yeah.
Didn't want her anywhere. He said she wasn't ready for prime time.
No. And but anyway, Boeing made out like bandits, even though they destroyed their own company. They could not compete with Airbus, so they tried to cut corners on their MAX 8, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't fit those oversized engines onto the same frame as the Boeing 737's frame, which caused all kinds of problems, and two crashes, and then they tried to blame the pilots. They said it was all the pilots' fault.
Oops.
And they still haven't figured it out, and even some of their older airlines have problems. 5% of their older Boeing 737s have to go through extra inspection because the sort of like the bolt assembly that connects the wing to the fuselage, some of them are loose.
Kind of important.
Yeah, some of them are loose.
Wow.
The screws are loose, which would cause vibration and possible fall off, so...
The screws are loose?
Yeah.
Kind of like Joe
Biden.
Loose
and they're kind of like the Biden jet, right. The 737 Biden edition. But they're... so they put the airline... They don't deserve a bailout.
You know the thing.
You know the thing, Brenda.
So, again, we have to reserve some judgment on this. Everyone knows that this is an unprecedented crisis, and so these kind of measures have to be taken, and we just have to hope that cooler heads will prevail, and hopefully we'll get the data that will show that the models are somewhat wrong, and that we can go back to somewhat normality by the end of the month or soon after.
I think talking truth to power is going to go out on a thin branch here and say that just what you said is going to be what happens in the future. We're going to see this as a thing way blown out of proportion, and that'll be a good thing.
That'll be a good thing
for all of us.
Yes.
Despite what Andrew Cuomo says.
Oh, yeah, Andrew Cuomo, he's raping in the minutes, but you don't think he's going to be able to take over and be nominated?
Apparently, there's really no expectation for his recent notoriety to be a successful launching pad for a national campaign. He's not popular beyond New York, apparently, and I see why. I can see why. Mm-hmm. Middle America has no appetite for Andrew Cuomo.
No. So, who would Biden pick for vice president if it gets that far? If he's not thoroughly washed out?
Well, to give him credibility, he has to pick somebody that has stature, and that's why I always maintained that it would be Hillary. I'm staying with that.
Maybe. The governor of Michigan, who's a woman, can't think of her name, but she's has a kind of a Scandinavian name, but that's an important state. She's an attractive
I know who you're
woman.
talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's one possibility, and of course, people are talking about Kamala Kopp.
Well, here's the deal: is that they're going to, if Trump looks like the next, that he'll be reelected. Mm-hmm. It's all a matter of who they decide to run to lose.
Right.
They're going to throw somebody to the wolves. And if that's the case, then it won't be Hillary. It'll be somebody like you suggested there, because they're not going to throw away future electees for a down. Those down ballot people are very important to the future.
There was one presidential candidate that had to leave because of mental problems. What's his name? Eagleton?
Yeah, I can't think. It's something like that. It's very good. Very good.
is your worldwide invite to chart.
Getting to know you.
Let me tell you about America Matters with Eddie Floyd. It comes on every Monday at noon. Don't want you to miss it. That's America Matters with Eddie Floyd.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Are you at all concerned, as Trump said, that we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself?
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what.
What? It's a goodie.
Yes, so he's decided to hold up in his basement and just do podcasts, which nobody is listening to.
And I'll leave his...
they can be edited, they can be edited down, any gaps.
And he's already selected his cabinet, so they can be out there on the lecture circuit talking him up, so perfect. And what he's suggesting this morning is, did you see this?
No.
He's imploring the American people to expect voting by mail in the general election this November. Isn't that something?
Yeah, well, that'll certainly cause no problem.
Yeah, what could go wrong? So, it's just, it's wide open. We have no idea where we're going here with the virus on top of everything else. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. No. I expected it to be very entertaining this year. I didn't expect a virus to come along.
No. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, as Monty Python used to say.
Yeah, good point. Bring out your dead.
So what about this Tara Reade person, this woman that accused Biden of actual rape? In other words, forcible penetration digitally with his, finger. And
the media sure played that up,
in 1993. And the only people that have played it up at all are the far left, progressives. And, some of the libertarian magazines have been talking about it. And she doesn't seem to be the most stable person. But on the other hand, neither was Christine, Blasey Ford or, Christine Ballsy fraud.
As Limbaugh describes her.
Yeah.
What? How old is she?
Well,
currently.
I don't know. This was 1993 that she's talking about, so she's got to be in her 50s.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So she's quite a bit younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she says that she reported it to her supervisors, and nobody, the climate was different in those days, and nobody. And then she did tweet afterwards, that she. Tweeted approvingly of Biden at his stand for women's rights and so on. That is on the record, and then that before she came forward again, she didn't seem to have any animosity towards Lunch Pail Joe, but then all of a sudden this came up, and then they're making a big deal about her. Attitudes toward Russia.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, apparently in 2016, and she was against Russia, and she was tweeting, and she writes stories. She considers herself a writer, and she says she posts in web magazines and as well as a Twitter account, obviously, and she. Says that in 2016 she was against Putin and calling him awful and Russia was bad and everything. And then in 2017 and 18, she was praising Putin as a warm, compassionate human being, and he deserves to be he's much appreciated by the Russians, and he deserves it, and all this.
So is she suffering from dementia as well?
I don't know. And then she says that she joined a creative writing group where she met some Russians, and they changed her mind about Putin to a certain degree. And so But of course, the left is going to bring that up because they're going to call her a Putin stooge.
Yeah. Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, is he infected? Because we saw yesterday where he visited with a doctor who has now acknowledged that he's infected.
The doctor is infected?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that Putin himself is infected. He put on that hazmat suit to visit the hospital in Moscow the other day.
That was a week or so ago, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is just within the last few days.
Oh, and you know what? Putin says that the rich in Russia are going to pay.
I saw that.
For the, he says it's not redistribution of wealth. We're just going to say that the people that are most able to pay should pay the biggest burden and to get us through this crisis. And also, he put a 15% tariff on dividends that are exported to other countries. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so
that's good for public relations.
Yes. So
he knows how to win the hearts and minds of the Russian people.
Exactly. But Miss Reade, even though her story is inconsistent, at this point of the game, you know, the mainstream media was all over Christine Ford. You know, they were all, we have to believe her, and this is a lot more of a serious allegation than just some at a college party, Kavanaugh jumped on the bed with her. You know, this is a lot more serious than that.
Right. It definitely is. Of course, that won't pass a smell test with the mass media, though.
No. And Biden supposedly said to her, Biden, asked her to go do the thing with him, apparently.
You know the thing.
And and then when she refused, he said, "You're nothing to me," and walked away.
Right.
That's pretty cold.
You know the thing.
You know the thing. Oh man, I don't know where we'd be without Biden this year.
So again, is this hypocrisy? And then that she went to Time's Up, which is a legal defense fund or within the women's movement, the Me Too movement, and they declined to take her case because, quote, it would jeopardize its nonprofit status to go after someone who's
running for president,
for federal office.
Yeah.
And other attorneys have said, no, all they have to do is stick to the regular guidelines, as long as they don't make it political, as long as they make it based on the context of the facts and so on, and the usual procedures shouldn't affect their status at all. And then the public relations firm for the Time's Up is a firm called SKD Knickerbocker, and the director is one Anita Dunn, who is a top advisor to the Biden campaign.
Who knew?
Who could have thunk it?
I'm telling you.
So,
the incest in that town is something else, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
So she's being thrown under the bus so far. We'll see. I mean, we'll see if the mainstream media does anything at all in the next week or two. But so far, they refuse to touch it. You don't see it on cable news. The only people, like I say, are libertarian and progressive web outlets that you're going to hear her story on.
Well, they're going to try to save him for now, so I can't imagine it going anywhere. I just don't see it.
And so the beat goes on with the Biden campaign, although it's not exactly a consistent beat.
Drummers are speeding up and slowing down.
Yeah. So we don't know. We haven't seen the last of Joe, Lunch Pail Joe, working class Joe.
Gosh, I hope not, because he's a lot of fun.
I know, and they would think that they would come up with somebody else besides a nepotistic, womanizing.
Lion, dog, face, pony soldier.
That kind of thing. Yeah, right.
Candidate of all the establishment candidates, you would think they would come up with someone that didn't have all his baggage.
Right. I mean, and they haven't. I mean,
no.
There's just nobody waiting in the wings there. Yeah.
No,
all their cards are on him.
Yep. And Trump hasn't even really started to attack him, except every once in a while, a little aside. But,
yeah, because he doesn't need to.
And they haven't heard hearings on Burisma yet or anything like that.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing from the Senate.
So
nothing from Graham.
No.
Where is he? Huh?
Where is he? He promises a lot, but how much does he deliver?
It's just this coronavirus is an excuse not to do anything for some of them, I think. Of course, he was in quarantine, wasn't he?
No, I don't.
Graham, I think, was in self-quarantine for a couple of weeks,
Yeah, Ron Paul, of course, is quarantined. He has the virus. He actually has it. There was talk of him coming down to vote in a hazmat suit, but he didn't have
He said
to.
he would do so if necessary, so that we had a legitimate roll call vote.
Right.
That was the whole point, yeah. Because Massie's a good friend of Rand's.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we had a whole house full of Massies, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
No.
It just wouldn't be necessary. We could all go to the beach. Oh, wait a minute. We don't have beaches in Nevada.
No, we don't have. Well, we go up to Lake Tahoe.
Oh, with those beaches, yeah.
Yeah. But the so that there just aren't enough people like Thomas Massie and the others that are regarded. They're a small minority, and most of the people up there are political hacks.
And the problem is that they're going to try to primary Massie.
Oh, sure.
And the guy who apparently is in the lead to primary him is an anti-Trumper. So that should be of considerable concern to the White House. So I'm expecting a rapprochement between Massie and the President of the United States. Yes.
Yeah. The lesser of two evils, huh?
Definitely.
All right. Well, when we come back, we can talk a little foreign policy because the COVID virus is affecting that as well, if you'd like.
Rich is just a really, really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also...
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the final segment of Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, my co-host, Lee Faegre. And we're here to talk about a little bit of foreign aid in the final segment. We try to cover foreign policy, not foreign aid, but foreign policy.
Well, foreign aid is part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Big part of it, actually. Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that Pompeo has been on the rampage while everybody else is distracted with COVID. He and Elliott Abrams have named Maduro, the president of Venezuela, a narco trafficker. And I have seen a picture, a graph that shows that the amount of cocaine that is exported from Venezuela is a tiny trickle compared to the amounts that are exported from Colombia directly to America or Mexico on the Pacific side of the outlet. And the cocaine comes from Colombia, but the allegation is that Maduro was involved in this Colombian drug trade somehow. But Elliott Abrams, in typical Abrams fashion, he named a retired anti-Maduro general as the chief trafficker by mistake.
You mean that member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Elliott Abrams?
Yes.
That Elliott Abrams?
That Elliott
Abrams.
Okay. So once again, he messed up.
Yeah, but that's easy to do.
I mean, all these Spanish guys, their names
they
sound
all
alike.
sound alike.
So the general was furious, but he had to be extradited. They had to cover it up by extraditing him to New York City as a material witness.
I saw that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
how did that go, Elliott?
Put down that cell phone, Elliott.
He's sitting on a sofa someplace in D.C., and he's calling the shots, and I don't know. Was he ever competent? I don't really know whether he was ever. If he has a.
All you have to do is look. None of these guys are competent.
Yeah, but I mean, does he have anything in his portfolio that he can actually tout? As an.
He's married to Midge Decter.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. I don't even know who that is, but
she was important. These guys all go back to a little organization called Social Democrats USA, which came out in the 1960s. You had the New Left, and then you had the old Bernie Sanders left, which was Michael Harrington with Poverty in Appalachia and all that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you had these Social Democrats USA, which are kind of right-wing socialists. And that's one of the foundations of the neocon movement.
Right-wing socialists.
Yes. Okay. And the name... They're members of the socialist... They consider themselves members of the worldwide socialist movement.
Now, would they be neocon? Would they be Straussian, Trotskyite-like anti-Trumpers?
Essentially, yes. I don't know if they were so much in Straussian in those days, because we're talking about the end of the 60s. And then, but Shachtman, I think, was the name of the guy that headed it, and his sister or daughter was named Midge Decker, and she's the one that married... Elliott Abrams, and that's his main claim to fame. I don't think he's ever accomplished anything worthwhile.
So that explains his advance in the circles of
they're all a tight-knit group. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I know we better call security, but
it's hard to find in here.
There's a couple. They question.
Yeah, I see them out there. I do see them. Yeah.
But the Jews are famous for social networking, and that's what they do. And this is the neocon movement is primarily a Jewish movement, and that's
now. How about Kerry and the Heinz Empire? Does that explain Kerry's?
No, Kerry's out of a different bag. I'm sure. Yeah, he's not a neocon like that.
No,
he's a neoliberal, fellow traveler or something. I don't know. And then the neocons after that they went on they first went from Social Democrats USA. When they saw that wasn't going to go anywhere, they went to the Democratic Party, and they all became ingrained with that senator from Seattle. Oh gosh, Scoop Jackson.
Oh yeah.
He was there. He was the senator from Boeing. They used to call him, and he was the big neocon Democrat, neoliberal Democrat, and after. The Democrats turned slightly anti-war in the 70s, McGovern and all that. Then they started drifting to the Republican Party, and they infiltrated the Republicans, by the time Reagan was elected. And that's where they are today. They're a parasite. They leech onto whatever party will give them sustenance until they leech it dry.
And they're happy about it.
Oh, yeah. So they're calling Maduro a narco trafficker. I don't know whether that has any other significance, but it's kind of like reminds you when they called the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization. Does that mean we're getting ready to attack Venezuela like we did Panama?
Well, that's the suspicion. Yeah. It seems like that's what they're up to. It's hard to really fashion a scenario where any of this makes sense, honestly, from the beginning.
Oh yeah, I mean, attacking Venezuela would be a mess. I mean, Maduro not only has an army that's loyal to him, but he has 30% of the country he has a huge militia. He has people that would instantly dissolve into the countryside if we did send an army down there and fight guerrilla war for years. So and the big thing is now that Guaido is no longer going to be considered the interim president.
Yeah, or he's sharing it with somebody. Didn't I see that?
Well,
that kind of a thing.
What Pompeo is trying to do is establish some kind of setup in Venezuela where Maduro and Guaido would power share until the election.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
I'm telling you, they're so desperate for something to come out of that it's very, very funny. If they only knew how much fun we had talking about it here on Talking Truth to Power, they might put it into it. But then again, maybe they wouldn't. They're just so desperate to accomplish what they think they can accomplish.
And so far, for some reason, Venezuela seems to be doing relatively well with COVID-19.
Well, they have to. Well, a third of the population is Gesfincto. It's not there anymore. So I guess that has some sort of a mollifying effect. Yeah.
Okay. That might be the reason. And then there's, the other thing I wanted to bring up is that we're getting a lot of neocon propaganda. You and I, we both look at the website on occasion, Zero Hedge, and it's pretty much a resistance website. But they've been publishing stories by the Gatestone Institute, run by Nina Rosenwald, who is both in the CFR and AIPAC.
Well, my ears just opened up when you said CFR.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know whether they're paid articles. Maybe Gatestone pays them to run them because it's not the usual thing that you see on Zero Hedge. But we're seeing a lot of this. We've talked about before the Integrity Initiative, where England is actually paying journalists in Europe to take an anti-Russia line. And the Atlantic Council, if you're not familiar with the Atlantic Council, they're the big pro-NATO think tank, or stink tank, as you might want to call it.
Yeah, even better.
And they are also the primary censors on Facebook and Twitter. They rely on largely on input from the Atlantic Council to decide what is really news and what is disinformation, in quotes.
They'll decide for you.
Yes. And they'll cancel you or delete your tweet or put a flag on it and saying, this is really disinformation. You can read it if you want, but, So they Russia and China have sent aid to at least 80 countries so far, and in particular Italy. So when Russia sent, and also America, there's a Russian military plane coming to America with medical aid.
Yep. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, the idea that Putin is a hateful person, I mean, he's always open to people talking with him. And,
it was the neocon crowd that wanted to extend that.
Right.
Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was never really a legitimate extension of the American people's feelings.
So just to let you know, you've got to be able to look into these stories. Like if you look at the Gatestone Institute and you click on it and you go to About Us and you go down to the Nina Rosenwald and then you click on that link and then you get to the fact that she's both CFR and AIPAC, then you know where she's coming from.
It's very easy. Very easy. Yes. Yeah. The affiliation really tells a story.
Right. Exactly. And so they're trying to smear Russia. The aid to Italy has been called 80% ineffective. And what they do is they have one story, one printed story in a news outlet, and then that generates, dozens of other stories off that one story. And the source of that story is really the author of the story. I mean, there's really no source to the idea that 80% of the aid from Russia was ineffective. The Italian government and the mayor of Lombard, the area that's been hardest hit, they've never said anything like that. They thanked Russia for the aid profusely. But you've got to watch out for the propaganda, folks, and this is not where you hear propaganda. You get the truth here and Talking Truth to Power.
All around the world.
Well, we'll be back again next week. Bye.